Grandma and Grandpa loved each other very much. The hard part is one of them had to see the other one die.
I said, I want to solve the murder of Ed and Minnie Marin.
We didn't have any more witnesses. This case is dead.
I've always wanted Grandma and Grandpa to be remembered as that happy little couple taking care of each other, rather than just victims of homicide.
When an investigation runs out of leads, it becomes a cold case. Years pass, and hope fades. But for the families of the victims, these cases are never cold. The truth takes time. It's nearly Christmas. The people of this close-knit logging community watch as the '69 Chrysler of Ed and Minnie Marin drives through the center of town. They don't know that their neighbors will soon be dead.
I didn't get the call until 8:30 at night. I had came home from working out in the wet, cold snow and ice and had dinner and was headed off to bed when my dad called and said, you need to come down to Grandma and Grandpa's. And I knew something was wrong right then. I got in my truck, left my ranch, went down, and there was many things going through my mind. It was spinning fast, I know. Around the corner and I see all the cop vehicles. Felt like my heart dropped out of my chest and hit the bottom. As soon as I got out of my pickup, I was greeted by one of the officers. He said, we don't know for sure, but your Grandma and Grandpa is missing, and there looks like there's been some foul play. I walked in, and I see papers strung around in the house. They kept a bunch of bank statements in shoe boxes, and they were strung out over the living room. Grandma's purse was left by her chair tucked behind the couch. She never left the house without her purse. This ain't normal.
My dad came over to our house and he said Grandma and Grandpa were missing. Their car was missing too. We were all in shock and disbelief.
The Morans had some financial means. They sold Christmas trees from their Christmas tree field. One scenario was probably that maybe they'd been kidnapped and were being held somewhere. Dennis Hadler was Minnie Moran's son. He was a well-known entity in Lewis County because he was the owner of Dennis Hadler Logging.
He was probably one of the largest logging companies in the Northwest at the time. I remember growing up here in Lewis County, and if you worked in the woods, you probably worked for Dennis Hadler.
I thought somebody grabbed Ed and my mother, and that they would hold them ransom.
You know, most everybody was trying to think the best, but figuring that the worst was about to come.
The very next day, in the early morning hours, an employee at the Yardbird shopping mall reports a vehicle matching the Marin's description. Detectives responded over to the parking lot and they found the car. It is an icy morning. They could not see in the window, and one of the detectives, instead of touching the car without having fingerprints, blew warm air onto the glass. Once he did that, he could see that the car was covered in blood, which would probably be burned in his brain for the rest of his life. There was a red blanket covering the seat. The detectives could see damage from what appeared to be shotgun pellets going into the dash. Mr. Marin's hat that he's known to wear all the time was laying on a floorboard, and still no sign of Ed and Minnie. Maybe they're in the trunk. There's nothing in the trunk.
I never did go see the car.
Did you want to see the car? Did you choose not to see the car?
I chose not to go look at the car.
During the first few days that Grandma and Grandpa were missing, we got together at my mom and dad's house with search and rescue. They had a huge map. We were given a section to go and look for them.
There must have been a couple hundred people involved, plus all the sheriffs, and pretty intense search.
We gotta find them. They're out there, and we know that they're hurt.
We were searching everywhere, but the logging roads are endless around here.
I'm actually scared to get out and look. I was terrified.
I was out scouring the different county roads when I got the call over the radio and said they had found their bodies.
A man was traveling down a logging road, and he saw what he thought was a CPR dummy. And then he realized that it wasn't a CPR dummy. He had actually discovered the body of Minnie Marin.
A friend of mine was the one that found them. He saw Grandma laying alongside the road. And then Grandpa was in the brush, close to her.
Minnie had been shot in the left shoulder and the neck, and then Ed had been shot almost square on in the back.
We go to the scene. We realize that there are drag marks saying they were drugged from their car and dumped like garbage along the side of the road.
When we went up to look at the crime scene, it was ribboned off, and my dad said, well, I guess that's Mom's blood, because it was frozen where she laid. The hard part is they were scared to death in their last few moments together, and then one of them had to see the other one die.
The last time that I seen my grandparents was on the Sunday before they disappeared, and I stopped in to see them. Took my grandfather down to the store, got milk and eggs and bread, not realizing that that's the last time you're going to be able to touch them or hold them or talk to them or see them or anything.
I put my hand on the casket, and I said, Mom, we're gonna catch him.
I grew up in Lewis County. In 1985, when this occurred, I was 10 years old. Ed and Minnie were everybody's grandparents. The murder changed the way a lot of people felt growing up and living here. It bothers you.
When the Morons were killed, the public asked us about it constantly. The question would be, who? Who would do this to two 85-year-old, defenseless, old people? We really wanted to succeed. But we had no murder weapon. We had no fingerprints of suspects at the crime scene. We had no DNA evidence because there was none in that day and age.
There's dozens and dozens of fingerprints in the house, in the vehicle, and the exterior of the vehicle. The majority of those prints came back to Ed and Minnie and some other family members. One of the biggest items that's collected as evidence is that they found a bank receipt in Ed's pocket.
I'm presently out at Sterling Savings. Apparently you had a transaction with Mr. Moran. Could you explain what occurred now?
Mr. Moran called and asked if we had any money. And I said, yeah, we had a nickel or a dime. And he said, no, he would need a little more than that. And I asked him how much. And he said $8,500.
When he got there, the money still wasn't ready, and so rather than wait in the bank, Ed went back out to the car. And when the teller went out to get him, Ed got out of the car before she got too close. She thought that she saw someone else in the car, but couldn't be sure.
When Ed Moran withdrew $8,500 from the bank, the question became, who knew that they had that money to withdraw? What if it was a family member of the Morans? There were cigarette butts in the car. Ed and Minnie did not smoke, and Mike Adler did smoke.
They're going to bring all the people out, and then the caskets will pile up behind them. You're going to get some good shots of everybody coming out. Recording? Here comes the casket. A couple of the people we want to talk to. Look at the pallbearer. Here comes your guy right there. Okay, make Mike press now. That's the bad guy.
Some family members were looked at a little bit harder than others simply because of their history, and one of those was Mike. Mike had a history with law enforcement.
Mike had a temper, a little bit too much drinking and fighting and getting involved in things that he probably shouldn't have.
They made me mad, pissed me off. And I pretty much told them to kiss my ass.
You want to look at someone who had access to the house since there wasn't forced entry. You want to look at somebody that has knowledge of how much money they had. And so they also looked at Rodney, one of the grandsons.
Whenever you have these type murder deals, it's usually always a family member or something like that, they say, that does it because they're all disgruntled or whatever. So they come and ask you these questions. I call it interrogation. It made you feel like you're guilty.
Between 84 and 86, there's a lot of major crime that's occurring in our massive acres of forest land. We got rape, murder, we got the Green River Killer discarding multiple bodies on the side of the county roads out in the places where there's no neighbor, you got nothing but trees for approximately 2,500 square miles. I-5 runs right through Lewis County. The interstate brings transients and criminals that normally do not live here, that shouldn't be here, and causing problems and crimes. One of them could be the killer in this investigation.
I saw a man with a rifle at Yardbirds.
One of the bigger tips we had was from two ladies who were cutting through the Yardbirds parking lot.
He was walking fast towards the trees.
Okay. Can you think of anything else?
I thought it was really strange for him to be carrying a gun across the parking lot. And It was weird that it was wrapped in something instead of in a case or just bare.
This was our first description of a suspect leaving the vicinity of the car.
He had dark brown wavy hair with a small growth of beard on his face. He had on a stocking cap and a green army coat.
Once we released the sketch, of course, everybody's calling in. Everybody imagines that the person they see could be the person in the sketch.
I didn't look nothing like the composite. Does my hair look dark?
We took pictures of anybody who met the physical description of the sketch that we had drawn.
I know that workers that had worked on that Christmas tree farm were suspects also. The police took pictures of them too. And then they made a lineup of, I don't know, 8, 10 pictures or however many they had.
The detectives gave that photo montage of black and white and small pictures to all these witnesses, and nobody could identify a suspect.
The cops were running into dead ends every time they turned around.
How may I help you?
The police received a phone call that somebody had important information about the Morin case.
I just found out about a guy that done a double murder. I'm talking about my brother.
Turns out his brother, Scott Coulter, he was married in the family at one time.
In fact, he laughed about it because it was his wife's grandparents. He said, "Oh yeah, but I got that bitch. I killed her grandparents. And I got all her savings, too."
We decided that we would focus on Scott Coulter.
He had burglaries in his history, he had violence in his history, and it was thought that he was seen in the area where the car was found.
He was involved in the drug world. We didn't have anything solid on him, so there was no reason to think that if we interviewed him, he would tell us anything.
The detectives devised a plan where they would pretend to be with the mob and that he was going to be initiated into the mob in order to make some money.
We met at the Tacoma Narrows International Airport. We got him in the car, and we told him that he had to tell us about something he had done, which was so serious, he would never dare tell anybody about us. I told him down towards the Chehalis Centralia area, there was a job involving 2 old people, and our sources are telling us that he might be involved in that. But you have to tell us something that tells us you're the man. This could be the guy. Scott Coulter was about to admit that he had specific information about the Morin case. We tried not to act surprised, but we looked at each other and our eyes got wide. We said, "Okay, tell us about that." And Scott actually said, "Well, I just got him in the car and took him to the Yardbird Shopping Center," and he went like that. Well, of course, it wasn't a handgun at all. "Now, what kind of gun did you use?" And he said, "A .22. It wasn't a .22. It was a 12-gauge shotgun. He had the wrong kind of gun. He was wrong on where they were killed. He didn't have the right answer to anything. You could have read the paper and gotten more right." He wanted to be the guy so badly that he would lie to us, but he wasn't the guy. Suddenly, we're back to square zero. We didn't have any more witnesses. No more people were coming forward. This case is dead.
There was no relief for a long time period. and you'd have nightmares. I had nightmares of different people, different faces.
You get up screaming and fighting. You fall out of bed, slinging your arms. And
the doctors call them night terrors, but I don't think you had one this week, but last week. Generally, they used to be when this was going on, they were every night.
I was just trying to take it all in. I was newly married. I was pregnant with my twins. I went into premature labor, and they died.
There's always going to be that little hole left in there. It never goes away. I wish it would.
There was a lot of fingers pointed at me, but what are you gonna do? It was really hard to clear your name. Makes you very angry. It turns you into a mean person instead of a loving, caring person. I'd just go out and get drunk, end up in a fight. Cops came and got me. And I told them, don't you think you should be out finding my grandparents' killers? They weren't doing justice by my eyes. The rage in me wanted to come out because I wanted to know who did it, so we could go take care of it and get it over with.
What do you mean, take care of it?
Take care of it. That's how we was raised. An eye for an eye. Tying them to a pickup and drag them up and down a logging road and stop and throw rock salt on them and watch them sit there in pain and drag them a little more and let them bleed to death. I dreamt of ways to torture them. And I don't know that we'll ever find peace until we find out who did it.
When I was hired at the Lewis County Sheriff's Office, this case was already cold for 20 years. I'm in my mid-20s. I said, I want to solve the murder of Ed and Minnie Marin. I went into the sergeant, and the sergeant goes, what are your goals for this year? And I said, well, I want to solve this case. The detective said this case has been unsolved for years and years. You might want to think about some other things, like property crimes, burglaries, and I said, no, I'm serious. So when I opened up the case, the first thing is going through this massive amount of case file. I'm reading this case every single night, and I'm so fascinated because this is, I feel, one of the most horrific crimes in Lewis County history. We got a robbery, we got a kidnapping, and we have a double murder. I'm living this, breathing this. I want the who, the what, the how, the where, the why. But I'm not the first detective to investigate this case. And so for me, I had to think about something that I can do different.
Hello, hi, is Frank there? Yeah. Frank, this is Bruce Kimsey.
I ended up going through every single statement of a witness saying, I saw the vehicle. I mean, just near Yardbirds alone, you had over a dozen people who saw that vehicle. Did you see the Morin vehicle?
I'm sure it was a darker green Chrysler or something like that.
This is a small town community. People knew who Ed and Minnie were, and so their vehicle was a very well-known car. I created a map, and I would pinpoint witnesses on the map. This is Highway 12. We start from the Marin residence, and several hundred yards from the Marin residence is the first witness.
He was going east.
Are you on the same side of the road or the opposite side?
Opposite side.
I could see the path of Ed and Minnie's vehicle from their residence all the way to the woods outside of Chehalis where they were killed. The descriptions match Ed driving the car, Minnie in the front passenger seat. They could only see one person in the back seat. Can you describe what he was wearing?
Kind of a green army type coat.
Remember the face at all?
I really didn't pay that much attention.
This is December 1985 in Lewis County. This suspect is in the vehicle driving all over the town. This is broad daylight. In a small town like this, somebody must have seen something.
While Detective Bruce Kimsey was fishing for more evidence, I was kept in the dark. I was still considered a suspect because they felt that it had to be somebody that was close to the family.
Some of the theories in the beginning involve the family, because Ed and Minnie are the type of people that do not share their financial statements or financial information to anyone other than family. They're kidnapped out of their house. They're taken to the bank. Ed requested $8,500. I think someone that would be more familiar with them probably would have gotten more money than what they did. Ed and Minnie are from the Depression, and they had multiple bank accounts, which is a very common thing for people that age. They would separate their money. And in this case, they went to one bank when they could have got a lot more money. Maybe it's not someone that's close to them. Maybe it's not a family member. It's someone that may not know them that well. Ed and Minnie had a farm with Christmas trees, which would bring in labor workers to work in these trees.
You know, part of the reason that they wanted to look at the people that worked at the Christmas tree farm is A, it was right next to the house, and you would have contact with Ed and Minnie, and B, those Christmas tree farmers tend to be somewhat more transient in nature.
Back in 1985, the police officers at the time took photographs of anybody working in the area. Every witness was shown photo montages of these people. The photo montages are about the size of a baseball card, and a person would have to look at this and identify who they saw.
The copies that we had were just not good. They were like copies of a copy of a copy. You couldn't tell who it was.
I went back and found the original photographs, which were in color, and I scanned them, and I'm using software cleaning up the original to make 8x10 pictures. They look better. You can see more of a description on a person's face, make out their eye color, their hair color, instead of a black and white.
You know, that's an area where technology really helped because it was like we had a whole new investigative tool.
Do you remember back in '86 giving 2 statements to detectives?
Yes, I do.
I needed to find every witness in this entire investigation and then talk to them one more time. I showed you 6 separate photographs, and you immediately picked out one.
That was the guy that was in front of Ed Minns.
Did you get a good look at his face
I
at that
got a
time?
good look at his face.
You know, it was amazing that as we sat and talked with the witnesses, they knew that they had seen someone, but it wasn't until that they saw the clearer photographs that they were able to pick out who it was in the backseat.
It's all starting to add up, but I still need more information. I think there's a witness out there that knows what happened.
I'm going down to Oregon to go deer hunting. Now I'm driving around in my pickup, and I have this guy holler at me, "Hey, Hadler." I was like, "God, who knows me in this town now?" And so I turn around and look, and it's an old buddy from high school, Jake Shriver. So I walk across the street, and we start BSing.
I saw Mike periodically. You know, and I would ask him, hey, what's going on with their grandparents' case, you know? After the murders, I always have to pass the Marin's house. My heart would just sink, and I just put my head down in shame. I said to Mike, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
He said, I can't do this anymore. I said, you can't do what? He goes, I gotta tell you something. And he said, you don't understand the hell that I've lived with this on my mind for the last 20-some years.
I just had to tell the truth. I feel responsible for causing them so much pain for so long. I still feel horrible. Back then, I was scared. And I was a 17-year-old kid. I never told anyone, but I know what happened. My mother was driving Highway 12 west. A car pulled out in front of us. It was an older car, and they were going slowly. So I said to my mother, I said, pass them. So we passed them, and it was the Marines. It was foggy out, but I could see who was in the back seat. They were heading westbound on Highway 12. Mr. Marin was driving, and in the passenger front seat was Mrs. Marin. And in the back seat, there was 2 people. I knew him when I was young because they worked for the Marines on the Christmas tree farm. It was Rick Reif and Greg Reif. And I told him a few days later, Greg Reif walks over. He said, "Did you tell anybody?" And I said, "No." I said, "I did not say anything to anybody." I said, "I swear to God." And I had not said anything. And he said, "Well, if you say anything, the same thing that happened to them will happen to you. We'll kill your mother, we'll kill your brothers, we'll kill your father, and then we'll kill you." The Reif brothers started driving by our house almost daily. They kill these sweet, innocent, elderly people. They're not gonna stop after that. They're gonna kill my whole damn family. I started carrying a gun since I was 17 years old because of the Reif brothers. If I had left the house and I didn't have a gun, I was 5 miles away, I'd turn around and go back and get one. But I am always packing, still to this day. You know.
You wear a gun now?
I don't have a gun now, but I have one in the drawer behind me, so. I knew they did it.
It's all starting to add up, and then Jake Shriver comes to the office and he gives a statement. Jake Shriver's statement is huge because in addition to seeing Rick and Greg Reif in the Marin vehicle, Jake ended up being threatened by the suspects. And what they said was, "We'll kill you, we kill your mother," just like Ed and Minnie Marin. And that is like one of the first admission statements that I ever heard them say. Just blew that case wide open. This is my theory of what happened. Rick Reif and his brother, Greg, they were known drug addicts and criminals in the area. The Reifs knew who Ed and Minnie were because of Dennis Hadler and Hadler Logging. And so they knew there'd be money. That night, the Reif brothers knocked on the door. When they get into the house, they discovered bank statements, but there's no money. In the morning, they're kidnapped out of their house. They're taken to the bank. They get the money, and they take them up this logging road. They were killed inside their own vehicle. Minnie was shot in her back, and the pellets went through her body and came out portion of her upper shoulder and face. Ed was shot dead center in the back. Bodies were dragged out into the woods and dumped. Then they turn around and come back to Yardbridge parking lot. Short time later, they leave and they move up to Alaska.
In my eyes, There's only one place them two brothers deserve to be, and they both need to be in the ground. These son of bitches are still sitting there living, and they took something out of my life that I'll never get back, that none of my family will ever get back. I found out through the investigation that the Reif brothers were up in Alaska. And so I went to Alaska. Some things just need to be done. And I ain't never gonna be at rest or at peace until they're all dead. I had found out the area the Reif brothers were in. I was gonna take care of the situation. I was gonna take them, kill them, feed them to the crabs, leave it at that, and walk away.
After all these witnesses identifying either Rick or Greg Reif, I finally had enough information to go to the prosecutor and request a warrant to arrest them for the murders of Ed and Minnie.
The thought never leaves your mind about who killed your grandparents. I would spend my nights going through bars, trying to find out where they lived. Most people either hadn't heard of them or didn't want to admit that they heard of them. And by right so, they needed to be scared of them so they wouldn't give a shit about pulling the trigger on me or you or anybody.
We have the warrants, we're good to go. So we start booking the flights to go up to Alaska. And this is when I discovered that John Gregory Reif had died.
When that news came out, it was kind of a blow.
I was just thinking, what are the chances? Could we get a little bit of luck here? You know, we spent all these years working up to this, and the day we get the warrant, he's dead. But I knew that Rick Reif was still alive, so we knew we had to get on this now. And so we fly up to King Salmon, Alaska, where Rick Reif was living.
I got a phone call from my dad, and he says, I know what you're doing up there, and this ain't the way to handle it, and you need to get your ass back down here and be with your family. You know damn good and well that Grandma and Grandpa wouldn't want you handling it this way.
When Mike was in Alaska, I think Mike would have done him in. That would be an awful burden to have all the rest of Mike's life.
I really don't know what made me turn the cheek and go the other way. Greg had died, and that really pissed me off, that he didn't have to come down and face the music. But somebody was trying to send me a message to get out of there, and that's what I did.
We're walking down a gravel driveway of Rick Reif. It was pretty surreal. This is 10 years of my life hunting down the killer, not knowing how this is gonna go. I'm scared that he's gonna grab a gun, something bad's gonna happen. If I walk up to the door, I see beer cans and a hatchet. The Alaska State investigator knocks 2 or 3 times, and the door creaks open. I'm thinking, oh boy, this is not gonna go good. And you can hear a male's voice say, "Who the is it?" He stands up, and he looks a lot different from what I expected. He has tubes going into his nose. He's on an oxygen machine. We tell him we have a warrant for 2 counts of murder, robbery, kidnapping, and he is so matter of fact. At this point, the state investigator advises him he's under arrest. And the only thing he says, well, looks like I'm gonna need my medications. I said, "You ever think all these years that detectives would knock on your door?" And he said, "Well, yeah." When that sentencing and verdict came down on Rick Reif, I've never sensed any feeling like that in my career. I was just really proud of our community, proud of our system.
Kimsey and the Lewis County detectives finally deliver justice as Rick Reif is imprisoned for the murder of Ed and Minnie. After 20 years, the Marine family finally has the truth and hopefully some comfort.
Hello, young lady.
Hey there.
Hello, Denise. How you been?
I'm better now. Told you on the phone I'd be better when you got here. Oh my gosh. Grandma and Grandpa are alive in my heart and in my fondest memories. But without them here, the family hasn't been together again. So it was time to get together and maybe have a Hadler cousin reunion.
Is that Michael? Oh, God. I haven't seen him for a long time.
I haven't either.
Oh, hi, kid. I guess what people don't really realize is my grandparents were only the first victim. Then you got the family. You know me, let's have a drink.
Let's go. If I could go back and speak to my grandmother, I would tell her I have 5 grandkids and I'm living the life I've always dreamed of. I think she'd be proud of me.